Before London Underground became London Underground, there were separate independent lines which were operated by individual companies. There is a good video by YouTuber Jeff Marshall which shows just how these lines were developed to create the tube we know today. These early railway companies made their own generating stations to provide traction for the trains. Some of these developed into significant power stations that were used for much of the 20th century. The first that was built was in Stockwell for the City and South London line, which later became the Bank branch of the Northern line. It opened in 1890 and consisted of 4 large Edison-Hopkinson dynamos. These steam-powered machines generated around 3 megawatts of DC electricity in total. Now, there wasn't enough power to run both the trains and the lights, so many of the deep tube stations had to rely on gas lanterns. Stockwell provided power for the City and South London line until 1913, when it became part of the Underground Electric Railways Company, and was then fed from Lots Road Power Plant, which is in Chelsea. The next power plant to be created was at Waterloo. Now this fed the Waterloo and City line. It was built in 1898 and generated around 1 megawatt from 5 steam-powered dynamos. In 1915, as part of the line's absorption into the London and South West Railway, power for the traction was supplied from a power plant in Wimbledon on Durnsford Road. The Waterloo plant still continued to supply services such as heating and lighting to the Waterloo and City line. This plant at Wimbledon was built in 1899. By 1923, the plant had a total generating capacity of 4.8 megawatts. By 1954, the output capacity was increased to 18 megawatts. As well as serving the Waterloo and City line, it also provided power to a number of other lines that would be incorporated into the Southern Railway. This power station remained in operation until 1968. Shortly after Wimbledon was built, a new power station at Wood Lane in Shepherd's Bush was commissioned in 1900. Unlike Stockwell and Waterloo, this power station used alternators to generate AC current. It had a capacity of around 5 megawatts, which was used for the Central London Railway. This would later become the Central Line. Wood Lane is of particular importance as it's the first example of high-voltage 3-phase power generation in the United Kingdom. In 1916, the generators were upgraded, increasing the plant capacity to almost 14 megawatts. But in 1928, the plant was shut down. In 1904, Neasden Power Station was commissioned. This coal-fired power station had 3 generators with a total capacity of around 10 megawatts. In 1909, another 2 generators were added, bringing the total capacity to around 20 megawatts. And in 1912, the original generators were replaced. This station served the Metropolitan Railway at first, and then the London Underground Power Network from 1933. Shortly after the conclusion of World War II, this plant was converted to oil, and in 1968 it was decommissioned and demolished. Also in 1904, Lots Road Power Station in Chelsea was opened. This was larger than Neasden, with a capacity of 40 megawatts provided by 8 steam-powered alternators, each with a capacity of 5 megawatts. It was claimed to be the largest plant of this type ever built and required 700 tons of coal each day. In 1915, new 15 megawatt alternators were installed, with another 2 in 1925. In the 60s, the power plant was converted to oil and 6 new 30 megawatt alternators were installed. This didn't last long though, because in 1977 the plant was converted to gas. This is probably helped by the 70s oil crisis and the large gas deposits found in the North Sea. Lots Road is by far the most significant power plant in the history of the Underground. It went from powering the District Line to powering the whole of the Underground, with little help from Neasden and Greenwich. But this wasn't to last forever. Soon after the conversion of gas, it was determined that it was uneconomical for London Underground to generate its own electricity when it was cheaper to purchase it from the national grid. Lots Road was kept on as an emergency power supply. In 1992, it was decided not to upgrade the plant and it should operate until it was life expired. And this happened in 2002 when the plant was closed down, the ripe old age of 98. The final generating station is Greenwich, which was built in two parts, with the first completed in 1906 and the second in 1910. It originally housed 4 3.5 megawatt alternators, and in 1912 another 4 5 megawatt alternators were added, giving a total capacity of 34 megawatts. In the 60s, the steam turbines which drove the alternators were replaced with Rolls-Royce engines, just like the ones in jet aeroplanes. As with Neasden and Lots Road, these were powered by oil and later natural gas, with a capacity just shy of 120 megawatts. Greenwich is the only power plant still in operation today on the underground. It serves as a backup function for the national grid, just like it did for Lots Road. In fact, in 2015, the Mayor of London, Boris Johnson, announced that 6 new gas-powered turbines are to be installed to produce low-carbon electricity and heat to the local community. So, London Underground gets its power from the national grid. That's the same source of supply as pretty much everyone in the country. But that still leaves some questions. How does the electricity get from the power plant to the station? And what happens if the power goes out? We'll look at these in the next videos.